Hey, in this video, you are going to discover how to create Amazon product images that turn browsers to buyers of your products. And by the end of watching this video, you're going to get tons of ideas for great images so you can get more sales on Amazon. Today, I'm accompanied by Ian Bauer. He's the owner of Graphic Rhythm, which is an agency that creates all sorts of different designs, imagery for Amazon sellers and general people who do different internet businesses. So Ian, why don't you please introduce yourself to us, man? Tell us about Graphic Rhythm. Tell us about yourself, man. Let's have some fun, man. Yeah, welcome.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah. So I own an agency called Graphic Rhythm. You asked me to kind of introduce myself. I started as an Amazon seller. I've been an Amazon seller for probably going on 7 years now. And I started out like most people do, or a lot of people do, probably retail arbitrage, which is awful. And I hate that. And so I'm glad I got away from it. And over the years, I've kind of like dabbled in a bunch of different stuff. Primarily my business has been like a wholesale model, so I buy from brand owners and I sell it on Amazon. But I've messed around with private label a little bit and brand management. And so my Graphic Rhythm kind of grew out of my Amazon seller business. I hired a designer, a graphic designer, and I've always had a graphic designer on my team. And so we were doing all these Amazon images and getting really good at it and getting good at things like listing optimization. And when you're an Amazon seller, you're typically part of a network of entrepreneurs and a community of other sellers and stuff like that. So my friends who were also business owners were like, hey, would you mind if your designer did this for us? Or, hey, what do you think? Could you do that for us? And I was like, sure, why not? And kind of what I discovered was I'm not a graphic designer, and I'll be upfront about that right away. But what I discovered was that a lot of business owners really, really struggle with getting good results from graphic designers. And a lot of it comes down to communication and understanding what goes on in the design world and making little mistakes that kind of pollute. I call it like poisoning the well when you're working with a graphic designer and you get in this like death spiral where you're giving them feedback and nothing looks good.
Yeah.
And so my role has always been to like facilitate great feedback with a graphic designer and basically help clients get better results. So now we try and educate clients about how to work with a designer and educate designers on how to work with clients. Obviously all of our designers in-house, we teach them like how to work with clients and how to manage expectations and things like that. So that's always been my role. So over the years, we started out with like gallery images, and then we start adding like A+ content, and then from there it's just become like we could do your Amazon storefront, your Amazon post, your logo, your inserts, your packaging, really all of it. And so yeah, that's kind of how we started and what we're up to now. And so and the thing that another kind of thing that I learned as I was building this agency is, as much as possible, we've always been try to be like a one-click solution, so really like point of sale. When you work with a lot of design agencies, it's like you reach out for a quote and then they have to give you the quote and then a scope of work agreement and then more contracts and then a project timeline. And all of our services, we try and optimize them so that you can like go to the website, click a button, get started really, really quickly. And everything that you need can be done in that one click. So if you need photography, we have a solution for that. If you need copywriting and image sequencing, and we figure out everything, we figure out what your images should say, what your images should look like. We do all the art direction, we do the quality control, we manage the photography, the shooting instructions, so as much as possible, we really try to make it a one-click solution.
I see, man. So welcome again. That's pretty cool to have you here. And as I understand, you started as a seller, so you know the things that sellers go through. That's, in my opinion, very cool, because there are agencies where people still create like cool stuff, but they're not sellers or they've never been sellers. So that's a huge advantage, in my opinion, when you have that like experience. And as you mentioned, you create all sorts of different designs. It started in-house for you. Like you worked, as you mentioned, with a person who did graphics, and then some of your friends kind of, talked to you and wanted to get some designs from you and stuff like that. And then, you just turned into an agency that really eases the process of talking to a designer, right? And because usually it's like back and forth, a lot of kind of communication. As I understand, you just simplified it. And also, we're going to have your website for people who would like to check it down in the description. And man, based on your experience, I'd like to ask you some questions, if I may. And yeah, we're gonna help, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, hopefully to help people turn browsers into buyers, whether they use someone else's services or they do it on their own. So yeah, man, I'd like to ask you some questions. Is that cool, man?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So let's start from the first one. I have some questions here. And the first one would be, so we all make mistakes, right? So what's the biggest mistake private label sellers make with their listing images? What do you see as the kind of the main one or something like that?
Well, so I would say that the number one mistake that I see is when a private label seller puts basically gets photography done, and then they think they're out of the woods, or maybe they don't even get photography done. We work with a lot of clients who are like, hey, I just went to China and we're just going to use the manufacturer's photos. And I would say don't do that. Like, at a minimum, have your own photography done. It's a market differentiator from the beginning, so if you're using the same main image as everybody else who went to the same manufacturer, why do they have a reason to click? So by getting your own photography done, that's right away going to make you different. But that's really just the start. What you really need to do is you've got to start thinking about your Amazon images as advertisements, right? And when you do that, it's a whole different ball game. It should click in your head that, hey, this is a whole different thing then. If you think about the way that, everybody watching this knows how Amazon works, right? So somebody types in a keyword, and then whether you're indexed for it means whether or not you'll show up on page one.
Mm-hmm.
And so the title and the bullets are really about driving that keyword optimization, getting you to show up in search results. Your main image and your title are really about really getting that click and getting them to click in. But when it comes to actually getting them to buy and check out, your images are the thing that's really going to make or break it. And the reason is because diving into title and bullets, especially the way everybody writes title and bullets these days, where it's like a mountain of words and really kind of hard to sift through.
Right.
People don't want to do that. They've got questions. They have expectations. There's things they need to know. There's things they want to know. And there's things that they didn't know they need to know. And you need to answer kind of all of that right in those gallery images. You get essentially seven opportunities to sell your product through those images. And most buyers these days, especially if they're anything like me, I don't know about you, but whenever I buy something on Amazon, it's like I've got like 150 tabs open, and I'm basically playing an elimination game where I'm like, nope, you're out. Nope, you're out. What's the reason why I'm clicking you away, right?
Interesting.
So if you want to make it into that final round, you have to say something interesting in those images. So the biggest mistake that I see really is a fundamental misunderstanding of what those images should be and what those images should do, and to really treat them more like an advertisement.
Right. So like, you mean usually people just take the images that are given by the supplier, which usually are like, come on, like 99 out of 100 times they're not going to be really good. And aside of that, people just don't think of the images, as you mentioned, like little advertisements or big advertisements for their product. And if you treat it this way, right, you kind of try to answer the questions of the buyers that are, skimming through these listings, and you want to help them like find the best solution to what their problem is, perhaps, then it works much better, right? So as you mentioned, the biggest mistake is that. And yeah, I agree with you, man. You many times see different listings that they're just basic images. They don't show anything. They don't really answer anything. It's just the product itself. It's hard to win the elimination game after that. And it's interesting that you mentioned that sellers can think about this. I don't really buy on Amazon, which is funny, man. I sell there for like 5 years. I don't buy there, but yeah, I mean, if you want to win the elimination game, you gotta present something good through your images, because that is like what you have, right? And so, all right, so that leads me to the next question. So, all right, so why is imagery important? So why is this even so important? Like,
yeah, well, so we are increasingly becoming, we've always been like a visual society, right? But it's bleeding into things. If you look at like the most recent social networks to get really big, it's been things like Instagram and Pinterest and TikTok, which is all video driven, which, by the way, is the next place we're going. Amazon is optimizing everything for video.
yeah.
And so video is going to be kind of the next big thing when it comes to Amazon. But imagery in particular, if you look at what Amazon is doing, they're really, really doubling down on imagery. and they're really doubling down on these visual presences. So we've always had gallery images, but now they've added A+ content in the last couple of years. And then they added brand storefronts, and now they've also added Amazon posts.
True.
And so it's becoming more and more visual, where they know that people aren't reading, that they're viewing, they're browsing. And so
Yeah.
they want clickable, they want easy to digest. And so imagery really becomes important because it's a way to quickly communicate the most important things about your product or about your brand or your mission or whatever it happens to be that you're selling in the particular funnel stage of awareness of the customer is in. Making it easy to digest is going to be the most important thing that you could do. And so that's really where imagery, in my opinion, comes in. And even off Amazon, if you look at like Shopify or an off Amazon e-commerce store, or if you're doing something like ManyChat flows where you've got like a Facebook ad or something like that, that clickable image is really going to be the difference. You wouldn't, I'm sure nobody watching this would think about doing a ManyChat flow that starts with just a paragraph of text, right? You want an image, something
Yeah.
that's
Helps.
grabs them. Yeah. So the imagery is really, really, really important to communicate big, important ideas as simply as possible.
Yeah, and probably also as fast as possible. You know, attention span is short, and you gotta realize that it's getting shorter because people probably are getting bombarded by tons of stuff that they see around, tons of advertisements, and they just skim around. We're used to the Facebook feed, and it's just crazy how fast it makes our attention span shorter. So, in 3 images, we gotta, I believe, like as easily as possible to explain to whoever's watching what they want to see, kind of. So maybe the solution to their problem and make it with a twist. But yeah, as you mentioned, it's important because everything is getting into imagery, into video, because people don't really read much, and it takes more and more real estate, such as Amazon posts now and A+ content that was added. So take it 4 years back, we had less images on the listings. Now it's more visuals, more graphics, because people like it. It makes them more emotional, and therefore they can buy more, I say, right?
Yeah, pretty much. That's it.
Right. And so, as you mentioned, there are images for like ManyChat, for Facebook. And what's the best approach, in your opinion, Ian, for imagery for Amazon specifically? Because we're most of us Amazon sellers here watching.
Yeah. So really, I'm a copywriter, and I've done a lot with like marketing and stuff like that. So when I started thinking about Amazon imagery, particularly for like the brands that I was managing and stuff, this was before Graphic Rhythm, I took this conversion copywriting approach. And so the number one question that you have to answer when you're looking at imagery is, what is the marketing stage of awareness for the consumer in this moment, right? So Amazon's not Google, and there's almost no problem aware people on Amazon. Nobody is going to Amazon and typing in back pain remedies, right? There's probably a few, but for the most part, what they're typing in is lumbar support, right? So they know how they want to fix their back pain, and now they're just going to try and find the product that's going to fit their needs. So at a minimum, they're going to be product aware, right? So imagine the journey that a consumer takes. And I'll give you a great example. I went for a bike ride yesterday with my kids, and our old bike rack that we have on the back of the car, I'm like, this thing sucks. I want a new one, right? And so like I went to Google, I'm like, best bike racks, right? I just knew I wanted a bike rack, right? And then I found this keyword, and I don't know how much of this stuff is polluted. My insider knowledge pollutes my search patterns. But anyway, so I found this keyword, which is platform bike racks, right? And so I was like, oh, a platform bike rack. That's the keyword. I'm going to go to Amazon right now. So I did. So I went to, and I typed in platform bike racks. And now, so if you type that into Amazon right now, you'll see a whole bunch of listings, and I know how it all works, right? But right now, that's the stage of awareness I'm at, where I know I want a platform bike rack, but I don't really know what features are important to me yet. I don't know what brands are leading out there and stuff. So I start browsing, and I start playing the elimination game, right? I open up a bunch of Chrome tabs. But what happens is when I first land on that page, I'm a solution aware prospect, and the images that greet me need to demonstrate the unique selling propositions of those brands. And so we always say that you have to start out with your unique selling proposition. That's your main image that gets the click. Image number 2 is your unique selling proposition. What makes you different than anybody else out there? And by the way, one thing you'll notice with me is I talk a lot about copywriting, which is weird because we're a design agency. We also do the copywriting for the images. And to me, they're interrelated. You have to have, they support one another. Our design, one of our design features standards is that it's copy first, so that the words are prominent in the image. But anyway, so you start with your unique selling proposition. So whatever that might be. All right, so I've learned about the unique selling proposition. Now I'm starting to go through the images and I can start to see the features and benefits, and I'm being pulled into it. And one of the things that we optimize for is customer transformation, right? So your
Hmm.
product exists to help your customer transform from an undesirable state into a desirable state. So in my case, and I'm going all the top of my head here. So in my case, I'm going from somebody who doesn't look forward to going on bike rides with the kids because I had to load up the bikes on the back of this horrible bike rack, and it really, like, I don't look forward to it. My kids are like, can we go for a bike ride? I'm like, oh God, no, I don't want to. Right.
Right.
So my desired transformation is like hero dad, where they say, hey
Hmm.
dad, can we go for a bike ride? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. This is great. This is easy. This isn't hard anymore. It's fun. So that is a transformation. And so if you can illustrate that transformation through your imagery, right? And you could do the carrot or the stick, by the way. You could say something like, going for a bike ride is no longer a drag. Or you could say, be your kid's hero, but going for a bike ride is fun and fast, whatever it might be. I'm
Hmm.
just, again, off the top of my
Yeah.
head.
Uh-huh.
But as you go deeper into those images, we start transitioning into transformative images. And throughout that, you really need to answer a couple questions, right? So we have an approach where we say, we want to know, what do people love? What do people hate? And what are people confused about? Right. And we look at the voice of consumer data, which is the reviews primarily of your product, if it exists, or a competitor's product. And we say, what do people love? Okay, people love that they can pull this bike rack down and get into their trunk. Wonderful.
Uh,
What do people hate? They hate that the things dry rot. Okay, so how can we turn that into an image that plays on these love and hate situations and positions you as the answer to those, right? And then the last one is, what are people confused about? And this is a real kind of golden nugget,
hmm.
that, as far as I know, nobody really pays attention to. But the question and answer section on Amazon is a golden opportunity. Think about this for a second. Let's say you go and look at your competitor's listing, right? And you scroll down to the question and answer section. The people in there, in an age where you could literally click buy now, and in some cities in the US, get your product delivered in a few hours, right? Where basically there's no wait. You don't have to wait for anything. It's all
Yeah.
instant around here, especially with Amazon. But those people, they asked a question and then they waited for an answer, or ideally waited for an answer. So imagine for a minute if that question was answered already, right? Answered in your images, ideally, then they would already be a buyer. They would do that already, And so mining the question and answer section is another great way to increase conversions. And so that goes in the gallery images. So I know that this is like the longest answer. I'm sorry, but
That's a great answer, man. It's
well,
it's
well,
really is.
so that
Uh,
when they're in the gallery images, right, you're in one stage of awareness, right, and you're like, okay, we've eliminated them down to like my top 3 or 4, and now people are saying, okay, does it have the things that I expect it to have? All right, so that's another category that we look at: expected features, and are we making sure that
mhm.
we're telling them that the things that they expect are there? So in my bike rack case, I expect that it's going to fold back to allow the trunk to open up. And so if I don't see it on there, even if your product has it, if you don't say it, goodbye, you're out. And we're going to
Right.
go move on to the final round here. And now I go down to the A plus content. And in the A plus content, I'm going to see like, okay, are you an established brand? What kind of authority do you project? And that's a key word too, is projecting authority, because you might not have any, but you could
Mhm.
project it through good
Hmm.
design.
Yeah, that's true.
So you get down into that A plus content, and now we're getting into the nitty gritty. Like, now I want to know, like, okay, does it fit the hitch on my car, or are there pieces that are replaceable, or what size bikes? Like all that really deep in the funnel kind of stuff is in there. And so by knowing that market stage of awareness and optimizing your images all along the way for that market stage of awareness, you're really hitting all of the points that your customer really needs you to hit at the moment that they need you to hit it. And if you do it right, then you've earned that sale, and you're going to
Sale.
be the winner of that conversion. So that's kind of, I don't even remember your question, but that's kind of how that's here we are. We've arrived at the end. But that's the way we think about images and the way that we approach images when, especially market message or funnel stage of awareness and messaging matching. So
Yeah, the question was, and you answered it really cool, man, is the best approaches for imagery on Amazon. So you kind of shared a really cool way you do it. And if I understand you right, you understand first the stage of awareness of the person that's browsing through Amazon. I would recommend the viewers to, because it's connected to copywriting as well, as you mentioned, because you're a copywriter, is to actually read about this, like the levels of awareness of a person who's browsing stuff on Google, just to understand deeply what it is. But again, there might be a person who, as you mentioned, somebody who has back pain or something, yeah, and he's aware that he has back pain, but yeah, how to say, maybe if he's more aware to specific problem with his disc, right? And then he would be looking for something for fixing this disc. It might be some sort of product, right? A disc fixer for the back, I don't know.
like a
But the,
traction device.
right, right. And then once the person clicks on that, right, we know that he's aware of his problem, right? And what you do usually is in the first image, after the main image, you share your unique selling proposition, right? Maybe your device is something new with some specific new things that you've added, something that really solves that specific problem, if I understand right, something that sets you apart. And then through the listing and through the A plus content, I understand you want to show the transformation from him, like maybe couldn't get out of the bed, to a place where he stands perfectly out of the bed, if that's the problem he's facing. And as well, showing the nitty-gritty details of, say, how it works, maybe you need to put it on some specific place on your back. Now we're talking about the back thing, but to the the bikes device, as you mentioned, that you put on your car, right, with your kids. But it's pretty much the same. You go through the features of the thing. So ideally you cover everything, also through the questions and answers that you mentioned. You can check it out on other listings. You want to get this person who clicks and close everything that he might ask, or each problem that he might have that we are aware of. So he's going to be like, right, these guys like know what I want. Like that's kind of the thing, if I understood you right, right?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the cool things that we do is we use voice of consumer data in the copywriting. So
Mm.
for instance, if we're looking at the positive reviews of your product, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
we're optimizing an existing thing, and the product review says, I love this. It's so easy to get bikes on and off, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll actually take those words and we'll put them in your image as a headline and
Pretty
say,
cool,
it's
man.
so easy to get bikes on and off. And there's a cool psychological trigger that happens there called echoing, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're nodding because you know. And so, like, you look at that image and you see this headline that says it's so easy to get on and off, right? And then the customer scrolls down, and they say, oh, there's a review that says the same thing. And they don't necessarily understand that the review came
Yeah.
first. They think that your image came first. And
Yeah.
now it builds your confidence and it builds authority. So we put that directly into the imagery as well. So,
That,
yeah.
that's great stuff, man. I think I've talked to you before we started the call about like gold nuggets, and you're like just like shooting them. And it was cool stuff, man. I appreciate that a lot. Hopefully the audience as well, if for people who are watching, would appreciate a like as well. That will help us kind of get up in the algorithm. Also drop a dislike and say why you don't like it. Maybe we can improve the voice or something, the sound, or just whatever. We're happy to get any kind of feedback. And so the next question I wanted to ask you, Ian, man, is like, what is the method that Graphic Rhythm, your agency, uses to produce great images? I mean, you kind of covered some things, but would you like to go through it so people maybe understand?
Yeah, so we have a fancy pants marketing term that we came up with called our market sync process. And the idea is that it synchronizes your messaging and your marketing and your market stage awareness. So that's kind of what I described, where we go through, first of all, we
Yeah.
look at voice of consumer data, and then we look at what do people love, hate, and what are they confused about. And we look at your features and benefits. We look at your unique selling proposition. And I'll circle back around to that because I have a couple tidbits for you guys when it comes to unique selling proposition. So we look at that, we do a transformation analysis, and then we do the image sequencing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is like the first week that we have your project, and we have a marketer and a copywriter that does all this, and they create a proposal. And then from there, we go into design. And I do want to give you guys some design related advice, but we'll get to that in a second. But for now, I want to circle back to the unique selling proposition, because this is a fun thing when it comes to private label sellers. And it seems like private label sellers are in one of two camps, and you're going to know which camp you're in when you're listening to this. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first camp is, I've done all my keyword research on Amazon. I've selected a golden opportunity kind of product. I'm going to go to the manufacturer. I've identified weaknesses and flaws in the competitor's products, and I'm going to optimize for that. Right. So that's great. You are baking in a unique selling proposition, whatever that might be. The one thing that I will tell you, and we always turn this directly around on any client who says it, is when we say, what's your unique selling proposition? And you say, oh, ours is higher quality. You say, tell me more. Like, why is it higher quality? What makes yours better? Is it thicker? Does it have a higher load strength? Does it reinforce rubber? Is it made out of some kind of special material? Is it a luxury material? Like, please tell us, right? But so that's the one camp, and good for you guys that have baked in the unique selling proposition into your product right from the manufacturing. But for those of you, and you know who you are, who are just like, if that looks like a cool product to sell, I'm going to go buy the same one from China, and I'm not going to make any changes. That's okay. Totally legit strategy. That's fine. You still need a unique selling proposition. Okay. And the way that you come up with it, courtesy of, I can never remember his name, Matchstick Men. Anyway, is make it up, basically make up your unique selling proposition. And that doesn't mean lie. What it means is look at what your competitors are saying and figure out what they're not saying. And whatever they're not saying could be your unique selling proposition. And I always give the example of garlic presses, because everybody knows about garlic presses and private label on Amazon, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So what could be a unique selling proposition for a garlic press? Well, if you look at your competitors' listings and none of them are talking about the size of the holes in the garlic press or something like that, then you could turn that into a unique selling proposition. You could literally just say, hey, the holes of our garlic press are sized specifically to get the maximum extraction without any big chunks of garlic, right? Even though it's the same as all your competitors, you now have a unique selling proposition because you're just saying the things that nobody else is saying. And so I really recommend narrowing in on your unique selling proposition so that at least you have something to differentiate yourself from your competitors.
Yeah, man, that's really nice. It's a nice way to to come up with something unique, even if you have another Me Too product.
Right.
You can do this in this way, or maybe you can create some sort of, we use a technology. I kind of mentioned it in a few of my videos. For example, if you have, say, the same garlic press, you can turn that, as you mentioned, say the holes. Yes, we can, the size of the holes, we can say like easy squeeze technology. This technology allows you to get a faster and easier squeeze of garlic because the holes are like 3.5 centimeters. No, that's too much for a garlic press, but such and such millimeters,
Yeah, and that's actually a cool point. That's something else that you could do, and I love that you brought that up, which is name your feature, give it some kind of fancy marketing name, and that's kind of exactly what Graphic Rhythm did with that market sync process. I was like, we just need a fancy marketing name that and that's exactly what we did. And so you could do that too, and like you said, our Sure Grip technology, or whatever it might be, and that becomes a unique something. Well, nobody else has Sure Grip technology, so.
Yeah. This is works as brain anchor for the people. Once they will be eliminating maybe different garlic presses, they might keep yours or remember yours with some sort of technology. Just stays there, and it just shows. It's kind of gives a, let's say, a perceived value of something new, something that others don't have, and hence you might get the sale. And I think, man, you mentioned something beforehand. You wanted to mention something else before.
Design,
yeah.
So the idea behind this, this conversation is really to give you guys an understanding of what goes into great Amazon images. And I always recommend that you hire a graphic designer. Unless you are a designer, by all means, go for it. But I really recommend you do hire a graphic designer. And it doesn't have to be Graphic Rhythm, but when you do talk to a graphic designer, it's important to understand like what to look for and how to look at images. And so I can actually bring up some of the images that we've done just to kind of as a point of reference here.
Yeah,
Is that all right?
Let's see. Yeah, of course. Let's see your screen.
All right, great. So these are just some from our portfolio. And what you want to really look for is ideally there's something called visual hierarchy,
Hmm.
and you want to make sure that the visual hierarchy is intentional. And so what that means is when you look at this image, ideally the designer has crafted this in a way that you look at the elements of it in a certain order.
Hmm.
So you may have seen this thing right away,
Yeah.
right? And then you're drawn to the headline and then you go down from there. So an intentional visual hierarchy is really important. Sometimes there's an accidental visual hierarchy where the elements are not well controlled. And so you wind up looking at the image in a way that wasn't intended by the designer or the copywriter. The second thing is make sure that it's copy forward. And what that means is that, and I could probably show you examples from our portfolio, but
Hmm.
sometimes there's a tendency to, especially designers, because designers are designers, right? And so they like to make the design really like front and center and whatever, but you have to make sure that the words are
Right.
easy to read, easy to
Mm-hmm.
access, easy to digest. The other thing that we like to look at is make sure that the image is visually engaging, right? So this one happens to be a gift kind of thing, so flowers, and it's really like attractive to the eye. And then the visual hierarchy here is, first of all, we want to like pull them in with this really nice
Mm-hmm.
looking gift, and then come down here and read the copy.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the elements that we look for. And the other thing that we like to say is to make sure that the design is more than the sum of its parts.
Hmm.
If design is unnecessarily decorated or over designed, it could be distracting and it could pull your eye away from the important things.
Hmm.
So ideally, the design is almost like this invisible thing that you can't put your finger on. The other
I
thing
saw
I'll show
also
you,
some comparative marketing there. I think in the near that other, yeah, near the yeah this one. All right.
yeah, and you have to be careful with this.
Yeah.
We have a couple versions of this that we do. Amazon is not a big fan of you naming your competitors or putting your competitors on the images, but
True.
we have a couple things we could do. This is like the checks and X's, or the other way to do it is like a table where it's just one value,
Mm-hmm.
and you say ours and theirs, and it's either a check or not. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Pretty cool.
and then I'll just show you some A plus content here. One of the cool things
Hmm.
with A plus content is you're really limited by what you could do. But if you get creative with it, you could do all kinds of stuff. So this, if you've ever put A plus content in on Amazon, you might recognize the only big giant banner that they give you. And this is actually it. But the way it was designed is it looks
Mm.
like they're all separate elements.
Mm-hmm.
This whole thing is actually one image. And so we capitalize on the white background on these cases to make things stand out and make it look a little bit more dynamic. So the idea is to make it all look visually interesting.
Oh, looks good, man. Looks good. Pretty nice and funny product as well with the lips there, but looks solid, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
plus one.
Yeah, this is a cool company. By the way, for everybody wondering, we actually anonymize all of our portfolio images.
Yeah.
So this is actually not Blue Swan. You wouldn't be able to find them on Amazon because private label sellers are a bunch of cagey sellers, and they don't want anybody to know what they're selling. I always say that Amazon sellers and drug dealers are the only two product distributors that don't want anybody to know what they're selling.
Yeah, you're right. It's people are very mysterious about their products.
Nope.
Like I
Nobody
sell
wants to
three.
know.
Yeah, yeah.
They're all hiding their honeypot. That's what it is. It's
Yeah, I
okay.
understand, man. I understand. It's not easy to launch these pads, and it takes a while to. So I do definitely understand. All right, man. So that's pretty cool. That's about graphic rhythm. You showed some of your works, man, and explained the process of work as well. Maybe next question. And people sometimes work with designers, and we might waste unnecessary time on that or something. So what's the mistake that sellers make that you see when working with designers? A pattern that you see, maybe?
Yeah, my biggest advice there is unless you are a designer, stop giving design direction.
Hmm.
And you might be thinking, well, hold on a minute, right? So I'll give you an example of good
Hmm.
design direction versus bad design direction. So there's a tendency, especially by business owners, which we all are, right? And we're very like type A and very assertive, to
Yeah.
like when you don't like something, you like dive in, you're like, okay, move this down here and then reduce the shadows on this side, right? So super specific design direction. Well, the problem is your ideas are probably terrible because you're not a designer. And I'm the same exact way. I tell my design team, like, hey, if I ever give you specific design direction, feel free to just burn it
Yeah.
and just do whatever you want. Because what's much more effective and much more constructive when you're talking to a designer is to speak more in terms of like your goals and your expectations. So it's better to say,
Mm,
it's too dark. Can we find a way to make this lighter? Or it's too busy. Can we find a way to simplify it? Or this particular feature of my product isn't prevalent enough. Can we find a way to make it more prevalent? And then this way, your designer is actually going to synthesize your feedback and then use their skills and knowledge to accomplish your goals, right? Where on the flip side, they're going to feel like they have to do exactly what you've just told them to do. And then when they send it back and you hate it because your idea was bad, they're going to be like locked into this death spiral where they're like, oh, I'm just going to keep doing exactly what they say, and it's always going to be bad. And you're going to get frustrated, and then they're going to get frustrated, and then somebody's going to tag me into pull everything apart and sort people out. And so really that's my best advice, is to kind of speak in general terms and the goals, speak about the goals that you're trying to accomplish, and then let your designer figure out how to accomplish those goals in a design capacity. Don't be afraid to say things like, hey, the text is too big.
yeah,
What you don't want to say is reduce the text by half,
right, exactly.
because that might
That's
not be
yeah,
the right thing.
exactly. Yeah.
You just say the text is too big, and then the designer will figure out what it needs to be.
And I wanted to ask you another question, like how can a seller get better results from a designer? But I guess we kind of talked about this now, right? That's also touched this one.
Yeah, if you're working directly with a designer, I really recommend what I just said. And the
Yeah.
other kind of helpful way to think about it is, I call it poisoning the well. You
Hmm.
poison their well of creativity, and
Hmm.
the designer really does become afraid to use to do what's right for you, because they think that you're going to become overbearing and try and take the design direction over. Let them be the art director, and let you just be the client and provide feedback.
Understand, man. And Ian, do you have a few more minutes, man, for some bonus questions, if I may? Like,
Yeah, let's do it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's say, what role does visual identity play in e-commerce and Amazon? Like generally, like why does it? Why does it matter? What it gives us?
So for those watching, visual identity is kind of the whole package
Hmm.
of your brand, really. Not your packaging, although that can be part of it, but like your
Hmm.
logo, your colors, your fonts, your typography, the imagery that you use, and basically the way you present yourself to the world. It's like your outfit when you wake up in the morning. And there's been some pretty cool studies. The one I'm most familiar with, and the one that I always reference, is Adobe came out with a study called the State of Create. I think it was in 2017.
Hmm.
And it was something like 70% of consumers say that they're more willing to shop with a design forward brand rather than one that isn't. So, in other words, their consumer confidence was higher.
Hmm.
And think about that, really. I mean, that to be true because you probably do the same thing. In all of the ways that you
Yeah.
interact with the world, you're more likely to go with the one that feels like a more polished experience. It just gives you confidence. You feel like you're in better hands. When you go out to eat, you probably feel a little bit better about the restaurant where everybody's dressed nice and it's clean and it's organized and
Hmm.
there's nice decor, as opposed to the restaurant that's maybe a little dirty or a little messy, or everybody's wearing different uniforms or something along those lines. And it's really the same thing. And there was a time and a place where, if you had asked me, should a new business like a private label seller, should you invest in a big expensive logo and visual identity package, I would have said no. I would have said, no, you're just kicking the tires, just go get a cheap one and then get a good one later on. And you could still take that advice, but lately I've been really thinking about like the impact of this idea of like hacking authority,
Yeah.
that by presenting yourself as a bigger brand, by just looking the part right from the get-go, you could increase your own authority in that space. You can increase consumer confidence in you. And a great example is, especially in the private label field, there tends to be this like, we're going to optimize for Amazon thing. And if you get a customer who's like, I want to know more about this brand, I'm going to go to their website. And then you go to the website and it's like, there's nothing there. It's like the Wild West, a
Hmm.
tumbleweed goes by, or there's just like some product photo just slapped up there and a get in touch
Hmm.
with us button. That's going to set off a red flag. So if you took the time and the expense to really build out that visual identity, including your website, and come off as a well polished brand, then that's going to pay off in customer confidence. So, and when you think about like a private label, your packaging is a great opportunity to interact with the client. You don't have to worry about sitting on the shelf at a brick and mortar store, probably. So you can optimize your packaging for e-commerce. You can optimize your
Mm.
packaging for the unboxing experience. The stuff that you put inside, the inserts and the instructions and so on and so forth, can be really well designed. And if you're particularly in the business of creating a brand, not just a single private label product, but you want to add more products, this could really benefit you because now you're positioning yourself as an authority in your space. So you might start off with your, winner chicken dinner golden nugget that you found, and then but you could get into the more commodity stuff afterwards because you've built brand loyalty essentially. So that person that bought that one widget from you in the auto space will now go buy the commodity stuff from you just because they're more confident in you. So I think visual identity does a huge amount as far as customer confidence, building authority, presenting yourself as bigger than you are. Really, that kind of like fake it till you make it idea, and you could do that right with the way you present your brand. So
Yeah, man. I think it's right. And also the part you mentioned about sellers, in the past, or people that might have asked you like, hey man, so should I invest in a more professional design? Should I get a more professional logo? And honestly, I did the same. In the past, I'd say like, yeah, it's a test product, like maybe don't invest too much. But these days I say like, hey, invest in good pictures, very good pictures, invest in great videos. So straight away, your experience on Amazon will be a bit more expensive in terms of investment, but it's fine because you'll see how the sales will start hopefully rolling in faster. And aside of that, it's just to the long term as well. You build a brand, you build an identity, and even if you're a smaller brand, you just first time seller in e-commerce, just started, say, but with great design and giving awesome perceived value of your product, of the product packaging, the images, people won't even understand. They don't need to understand. It doesn't matter. You just present a great experience to them. That's what they want. And you present a great product, you win. You
yeah,
have higher chances to win, at least, right?
yeah. People really want to buy from established brands,
Yeah.
but they don't. And I remember I read an article.
Hmm.
And my example is out of date. I don't think it's true anymore, but it was pointing out like how like some of the biggest brands, like the best selling like sleeping bag brand on Amazon was not Coleman. It was some brand you've never heard of. Examples of that, like these big established US powerhouse brands were losing on Amazon because they were sleeping at the wheel for some of this stuff. And so, if you have that opportunity to go in and present yourself as a well-established brand, even if you're not, that'll just do wonders for your conversions.
Agree, man. And before we wrap it up, man, just one final question. You mentioned Amazon posts in the somewhere in during this video. Maybe you could share the benefit, maybe some like how to say like tips for Amazon posts with us, because it's pretty cool thing. It's free to use as well for now.
Right. That is the coolest part about Amazon Posts is that it's free advertising. And for those who aren't particularly familiar, it's like a social media function for brand registered brands. And so it's mobile only right now. But when you scroll down on a competitor's listing, you could appear there. And it's basically like a social media post with a little caption. And when they click, it goes to the product, I believe, that it's linked to. And so it's basically free advertising. And we have been like going all in on this Amazon post thing. We have a service that like does it all for you, from like writing the captions to even posting it in your account. And it's just so cool. Now it's kind of tricky because Amazon, it's like anything with Amazon. Everybody watching knows Amazon's just tricky. They always
For
tell you
sure.
they're like, the answer is no, but we're not going to tell you why it's no. And so like we're trying to solve like how the best images to put up there, and it's not even the best images from like a conversion, but just like what Amazon will accept.
Hmm.
Like I saw one brand was literally just posting stock images that have nothing to do with their product. I'm like, how's that getting past Amazon? So it's a little tricky there,
Yeah.
but it's a really just a great opportunity to put up there like these engaging kind of social media posts that get attention and get clicks and get traction and show up on your competitors' listings. So yeah, check it out. Definitely, if you're not doing anything with posts, go check it out.
Yeah, it's only available right now for registered brands, and yeah, you can get your brand registered quite fast these days as well. And also beforehand, you mentioned that once you click on a post, it does not go straight to the product itself. It's gonna open like an option to go and further check the product. So there's the first click to kind of says show more, if I'm not mistaken. and then the products appear, and you can go to either the store itself or the products that are featured. You can also feature a few products. Man, awesome tips today, man. I want to say to people who are watching that we're going to have Ian's, as I mentioned beforehand, link to his agency down in the description. It's not an affiliate link. However, if I'll ever have a partnership with Ian, I'll just mention it down in the description. Go check it out, see if they can help your brand or not. See if you know, just yeah, check it out. And Ian, man, I appreciate your time today. Really cool stuff. I've learned a lot, man. I've learned a lot.
Oh,
And
well, thanks for having me on.
yeah. If you ever want to do more stuff, just drop me a message. We can do that. And I think we're gonna help the guys here watching. People want to succeed on Amazon, want to create the lives they're dreaming about. If we are able to help a little bit, Evan, I'm happy, man.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, man.
All right, thanks.